Good evening. Welcome to Drawing the Owl. My name is Sydney Icarus, and I am now very aware of what people think of me. I am the designer of the currently in progress home front, and I am also your lead owl, your owl chief, as it were. And you are my little owlets, and I am so very glad that you joined me here. Today's a really very special episode because we're going to talk about feedback. I ran the first playtest for this last weekend, so about 7 days ago. I have since gone over again and again the video, my notes, that sort of stuff. And I've done a lot of work on fixing the gaps that the playtest found. And it's great. We're going to talk about what playtesting means. We're going to talk about feedback. We're going to talk about where the game's going from now. And I think it's going to be really exciting because I think it's going to be a great learning opportunity for me and for other people. So let's begin, shall we? Let's talk about playtesting and the important thing behind it. There's a concept in software design called rubber duck coding, or I learned it as rubber duck coding. The cool thing about rubber duck coding is that it's basically what I do here for the most part, which is you have a little rubber duck. We're going to use this Aldi beer as rubber duck, and you say to it. So at this point, I'm running this code, and it's really functioning in this way, and this is how I'm going to do it. This variable here, Mr. Rubber Duck, is actually blah, blah, and it's basically like breaking down what you're doing into these really small explainable chunks. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've ever been a specialist in a field or ever studied a field, if you've ever been to school for anything, and someone has said to you, do you understand this? And you say, totally, 100% understand it. In my head, super crystal clear. And they say, great, explain it to me like I know nothing. And you look at them. And you look at them. And you look at them. And you don't have it because you understand it in your head because you're bridging a bunch of gaps that the other person needs you to bridge for them. And that's a really important part of technical writing and of presenting an idea. So that was the first thing I learned about playtesting is that the primary, not the primary, but one of the most important outcomes of playtesting is that you get to express all these ideas that you've had to someone else in a way that their blank looks and their questions will teach you what you're not covering off well, and that's something really interesting because I have, at least I thought, been doing that here. I thought for a long time that Drawing the Owl was about bridging those gaps, and it's really not. Because here I'm only talking to myself, or when I have people in chat, like, "Hey, it's Blake today." Yeah, it's not even about someone else running a game. That is so far from where I am at the moment. That is a couple of goals away, but it's more about being able to express the game so that other people can play it. Because role playing games are a collaborative exercise, and you can't, even if you're running the game, even if I personally am running this game, I can't do it without players being on board and without them getting it. So that was the first thing I learned. That's the first thing that playtesting taught me that was so important. The second thing is small understandings. Ailey had this really cool moment where she was like, so I stole luck and guts from Night Witches. There's luck, guts, and skill, and I removed skill, and that was kind of me saying something anyway. But I was like, yeah, this will work. This will be functional for a first playtest, and that was all I was going for, functionality. And Haley looked at it and she's like, so what's luck and what's guts? I'm like, huh? She's like, what's luck and what's guts? God damn it, Haley. And so I had to express it to her, and I failed like 3 times. She had to ask me 3 or 4 times, and fair enough too. And that was another thing, which is like, we have a lot of understanding that we assume everyone else has. The third thing that I took away from it was that people have different levels of comfort in engaging with a system. So, because it's a game that doesn't have touchstones, it's a little bit more difficult for people to start with. So, I need to be much less open with my players. Haley in the Parliament 1 spent a lot, which absolutely worth your time if you haven't seen it, spent a lot of time at the end talking with me about player buy-in and about how to generate player buy-in. My understanding that I took away from that is that things should be done kind of the way that I can't even think of a game that does it, and that's probably a good. I guess the Quiet Year does it, which is what I ripped it from, where it says, "Begin by talking about broad conceit. Begin by discussing the very broadest of broadness in your breadth. Talk about your town. Is this area like what's the general terrain like? Is it a desert? Is it cold? Is it like that sort of stuff?" And the problem is, um, I sort of just said to my players, "Let's talk about what we generally want to see." And everyone stared very blankly because it's a very hard thing to ask people to do when you don't even have touchstones. It's a bit different. So if we're playing Apocalypse World and I say, "What post-apocalyptic game do you want this to be like?" And people are like, Mad Max or Dawn of the Dead or Shaun of the Dead or like whatever, then we can kind of work through that. But because this is a game that doesn't rely on a lot of touchstones, saying to people, describe a city, and they're like, "I have no fucking idea, dog. It's your game. Why didn't you bring a city to me?" And so that was something else I learned, which is start with very small, immediate demands. Start with individual player demands and build that up. So what I said originally was broad conceit, and then invent little things each that fit in with that broad conceit. And what I've decided to do going forward is individual little things, and then they inform a broad conceit that you then discuss at the end. That's really all that is. So I had two systems, and we're going to bring one of them up. This here is a system based on. Come on. All right, we're going to do it this way. 150%. Yeah, you should be able to read that. So this system here is based on it's hex, right? It's generating obligation between players, as well as generating settings. So this has two goals. The first goal is to generate a tool for the GM by providing established fiction that they can leverage. So examples of this is this one right down the bottom. You were the first to piss them off and they want revenge. What did you do? What did you get for it? Now, how do you plan to tell the others what you've done? So this one does a really, really functional version of setting up an early conflict. So in our version, Haley had somehow upset a couple of ragamuffin gentlemen who lived around the zoo by knocking down their power lines, and their response was basically they just wanted to put a little bit of personal violence into Theo to basically teach him that we were all on the same side, and that fucking with other groups is not a positive way to move forward. So that was really functional. That really did what I wanted. But and as Haley points out in the debrief, some of them go past without saying much. And so the other thing they were meant to do is this bit here, take away their scrap weariness or bonds, right? So instead of, it goes back to a really core design principle that I had at the beginning, which is it should feel like the player's fault or the player character's fault. No, the player's fault. The players are to be the architects of their own destruction. So when I say someone gets shot, what happens? And they're like, "Oh, we got him back, but we had to leave stuff behind." okay, I'm going to take away some of your scrap because you left it behind. That was really effective from a GM perspective, but I didn't really notice player reaction to it. So I need to pursue whether that, like, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that it's as engaging to people uh, as I wanted it to be. Having the mechanical response to fiction, I don't think generated as much. So like by saying that players are architects of their own destruction, what I mean is players choose how they want the world to pressure them. So importantly, players choose when they want to trade their, like it's never the GM or the game or the MC or the game telling the players this is how things are bad. The players are telling the game this is how things are bad, and the MC is then moving against that. So that creates, or the intent is that creates buy-in. Um, I mean, the best example of this is any 7 to 9 choice, right? Which is like the Choppers Pack Alpha one is one I always go to because it's such a great move. Which is you you tell your pack to do something. You tell your gentlemen's and ladies and others to do things, and then they do it. But on a 7 to 9, no, it's on a 7 to 9. Choose one. They do it. They don't fight back, and you don't have to make an example of them. So as a player, when they I'll finish this thought quickly. As a player, when the pack fights back, it's the player's choice, and the character is like, "Oh fuck, this sucks. My pack sucks." But the player is like, "Yeah, all right, this is my fault." But it takes it out of the GM's hand, and it makes it feel more fair at a player level, I guess. Um, Dark Lavender Void story games. I have no idea who you are, but I'm super excited. Are you someone that I know? We should hang out. Um, Dark Lavender Void is such a sexy name, though. I'm on board. Um, so what are we going to talk about here? Character astrology. We should definitely talk about character astrology. So there was this really cool thing that happened, and I'm not sure whether it was coincidence or a result of the actual writing working the way I wanted it to. Like I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much credit I'm allowed to take for this, and this is why I need to playtest again and again and again. But there's this really cool character astrology thing that happened where so what's a great example? So, for example, Theo gets asked, you found the safe house first. What happened to make it home? No, Theo is fucking Ryan's character. What's Haley Tib? I always get Tib and Theo. So Tib was the first to make another suffer. If I don't follow you on Twitter, I really should. Can you Darklav drop your at handle in chat or hit me up on Twitter or something so that I can follow you? Because I'm super interested in that sexy name. So Tib got this thing about being the first to suffer to ensure that I wouldn't. Who was it? What did you take from them to give to me? And Tib really, they really lent on like this Tib making people suffer thing, like this really hard like taking shit from people. I will have a look at that right now. And then Tib's next one is equally what would you call it? Well, actually, this is interesting. Then there's Tib got this one about you were the first to piss them off and they want revenge, right? And so Haley walked out of it thinking, oh, okay, my character is this like violent type that causes problems. Interestingly, Tib also had this question about safe path to the communities. We were the first to find safe paths to communities around us. How did you lead us there the first time? What were you looking for? What did they demand of us? Um, and by the end of it, Haley was like, oh, so I guess after feeling this out, my character is this really, like, I don't know what you'd call them, like really, um, not even violent, but certainly like troublemaking kind of person, who upsets people and annoys them. The interesting thing, and the reason that this is worth talking about, is if we go to Tibbs' PC tab, the these are the adjectives that Haley had picked for Tib before we got to these questions. I would tell you that I'm tough and faithful. I've heard others call me loud and reckless. And it meant that because she had those questions, Haley really led on these like tough and reckless bits of the character. By the same token, Theo, who was Ryan's character, I want to talk about the questions first and then go back to the character. So Theo was the first to find the safe house, and Ryan's response was, "I made a nest, like I made it my own little home," which was very cute. Like I packaged up and made a nest for myself. Theo's next one is sorry, cough mute. Theo's next one is, "We were the first to scavenge from the wreckage. What simple relic of the war did you bring back to me?" Which is this really touching, like not even really touching, but it's an intimate kind of thing. And then this one, "You were the first to experience the unique intimacy of the war. Who did you approach? How did they make you realize it was a mistake?" So um, that was really interesting because Theo's character identity here is that they're calm and considerate, but others call them awkward and cold, which Ryan was saying, like, oh man, this so aligns with like these questions that I'm being asked. And Ryan was the first one to say the words character astrology. And I think I agree with him in that if we'd given those questions to Haley's character, we would have seen more about the faithfulness and the loudness, maybe, or the faithfulness and the recklessness, or like we would have seen a different combination of adjectives come out. So it does this really cool thing where being asked these very directive questions about your character, um, uh, it's this really interesting thing where you go from the, I think we'll go this way, from the start position to the end position. It could have gone in any direction, but when you look from the end and look backwards, you're like, it could have only gone this way. So players that look at these questions end at their, after setting their adjectives aside and after answering these questions, they're like, these questions were given to the perfect person. Like, of course, Theo is the one who got rebuffed on intimacy, right? But if it had gone the other way, if that question had gone to anyone else, they would have been like, oh, of course, this question went to Philomena, because that Philomena, I believe it is. Sorry, because that is the that's like the core, right? The core of character astrology is once you answer the question could have only gone that way, and that makes me think that this method of setup works, which was a great feedback thing. What we did learn though is that the other thing we're going to mention, because we're talking about from GM perspective on these questions still, the other good thing about GM perspective is that these set tone really well. So you make a safe house, and then you spend time. If you spend time outside the safe house, it's bad. And if you you have to make other people suffer to ensure that someone doesn't go without, there's not enough, so you have to share. There's gunshots, and you've got to get back under fire, like finding paths to communities, scavenging in the wreckage. These questions, these questions are basically, there was a time we rolled a basic move. There was a time we rolled the scrounge basic move. What happened? And the cool thing about it is that it by putting these questions up front, it tells the players, this is what we're going to do. This is what this game's about. if these were questions about like we once got into a fight with someone, what happened? It would drive a much more heroic, like visceral, violent sort of way of doing things. And Blake's entirely right that there's a reason it leads with we, because the second thing I wanted was to create obligation, and unfortunately, obligation never really came out. And obligation between characters is actually still something I'm lacking, and is something I need to look into. Obligation and intimacy occurred really quickly, like the first time they realized they had to spend scrap to live. It was like, fuck, whose turn is it? And that was really cool. That was really cool to see. But from a player side, I think these questions are really good because it's what's it called? Like oh shit. When divers go down slowly, it's like conditioning. It's like pressure conditioning you into your character. It doesn't go, okay, you've written 4 adjectives, fucking scene on, let's go, what do you do? Instead, it says, here's a situation with a really specific question. How do you respond to that question? And that should give you some freedom. So I think this setting creation questions is really helpful. And that was feedback I got from that from Haley and from others. Haley spoke to it specifically, as did Ryan, actually. Ryan spoke about character astrology and how much it helped to define character. V spoke to acclamation, and V's here. Fuck yeah! Now I can't talk about all the terrible things she did to ruin my my playtest. No, so V was amazing. V spoke a lot about how it helped to define tone and how it helped to do that thing that I said about like it taught them what was going to happen in the game. And I think as a GM, it helped me start in the middle of the action. It helped me know what this world was like before we went into it. The problem is it actually didn't take as long as I thought. I think I was just stressing out a lot, but it took about an hour and a half from the start of setting creation through the map into characters, into these questions to get playing, which I think is a little bit long for my philosophy, but is certainly something that we can talk about in the future. I just want to talk about it while I'm here because Lav is what I'm going to call you, made mention of it. But these 4 adjective things were really, really helpful for 2 reasons. One is that it defines the character in these really positive ways. And the other is that it defines that others see them differently to how they see themselves, which is a really core part of that teenage identity. The prompts over here are actually pretty good. I quite like them for what they are, which is I've made some updates in the new one, which I'll show you at some point, where you can be reckless, because Haley said that she wanted that one in there, and I totally agreed. I don't know who boss art drawing is, do I? Oh man, I love all these people who I probably have known by other names. This is awesome. Fuck, I'm so like super enthusiastic about this. So the other thing that was really important to me is that one of them is personal, one of them is collective, and that's true for both the positive and negative. So you are personally curious, but you are in the community, you are personable. You are personally unlucky. In the community, you are stubborn. And that was super important. You know what was really cool? This harm shit does not work at all. Boy, is harm a bad idea. If you if you want to make people avoid conflict, the solution is not to give them an ablative way to soak conflict. Holy shit, was that a bad idea? I learned so much from this. So let's have a look at the current Homefront character sheets. By the way, biggest thing that came out of this playtest was we got a name, which is Homefront, and I really like it. So let's have a look at these character sheets at the moment. And we'll talk about a couple of differences that came out of this. 150%. Okay, So let's take a look at V's character because V's hanging out here with us. Um, thanks, V. It's cool. Everyone that I've spoken to at the moment is like, oh yeah, it works. So I'm cool with using it for now. Um, so this is Phil's character sheet. She is still curious. She's still personable. She's still unlucky. She's still stubborn. There's nothing really that's changed there. Now we're going to decide for her. So one thing that came out of the playtest is there is nothing to stop players just rolling together all the time, and that's true. And at first, I was like, that's exactly what I want because it creates incentive to roll together. But it's also not what I want because I need to generate friction in cooperation, and I don't know how to do that. So the way I did was I did what I always do when I don't have an idea, and I stole the idea from someone who is smarter than me. I want to talk to you very, very quickly about a game called Liberté. If you haven't played Liberté, you need to. It'll be on my Twitter, won't it? I retweeted it on Twitter a couple of days ago. It's on Google Plus. There is an English quick start. Oh, that was an old man whistle through the teeth there. It was an English quick start of a French game that I had the opportunity to play last October. It will be somewhere. Be my notification somewhere. But the important thing about Liberté is that you're very young children. You're like 9 to 11 years old, and you're in a world where all the adults have gone. You're kind of you've been swept away by the water during storms in cities into like this horrific child apocalypse, basically. And it's created a game that is about emotional impact. Your stat that you roll is always, we'll use the computer screen version. There's got to be a really good explanation of it here. We're going to talk about, here it is, black bile. So every time your character feels a way about stuff, you will take a... So each time a player feels that their character has been stressed, humiliated, or horrified by something that has happened, they can take between 1 to 3 black bile tokens, their choice. And so the amount that you take describes how stressed you are by it. So if you really want 3, you can take it. Your character has just been... And this is very similar in practice to the contempt tokens in Quiet Year, where you take them off the table. It's not mentioned. Nobody talks about it. You just kind of slide them towards yourself and it means something. These tokens represent characters' anxiety or stress. This is kind of like, Viv's not wrong about this, but it's also not really relevant because there's a cool mechanic in there to stop you from worrying about it as well. But tokens represent a character's anxiety or stress, right? And so what happens is when you want to make a roll, you choose how many of these tokens you want to spend. So you spend between 0 and 3, and that gives you between +1 and +3, +0 and +3 on your roll. It represents the rage and stress invested in the action by the character. Putting 3 tokens into a single action means they're risking it all and to hell with the consequences, which this is super cool. Because what happens then is we've got the standard Apocalypse World 3-tiered success, but instead of having the best result at the top end, your best result is in the middle. If your result is between 8 and 10, you succeed and get exactly what you want. If, however, you're spending a lot of black bile and you're rolling, you're likely to go too far. And that's what the 11 plus is about. Your success with cost is that you succeed but go too far. You choose an option from the list provided within the description of your child. So let's find a move. For example, basic moves. Confide. When I need to be loved, to vent, or just want to spend a nice moment with someone, I can entrust them with something important and make a test. Make a test is roll. On an 8 to 10, so on a 7 or minus, which is probably what you're going to get if you don't spend any, if you don't invest your stress or anxiety into the roll, you miss and bad things happen. The MC makes a move. On an 8 to 10, I temporarily get rid of dark thoughts and nasty secrets I had by sharing them. Plus, you can choose one, and like you get some cool stuff. You can get rid of black bar you don't want. You can do all this sort of stuff. It's really, really cool. However, on an 11 plus, you succeed, but you go too far. You say things that might put you in trouble. You trouble them or shock them. You give them an impression you're using them. It's like this. It's so much less about the world and about like whether the world reacts well to what you're saying. It's so much more about you and whether you have put too much of yourself into the role. And so that is something that's really, I really want to port over. And so I've taken that same sort of stat, right? The idea of stress and anxiety. I am using intimacy, and I'm calling it heart. And the idea behind heart is that you will take it at certain conditions. The first condition, actually, let's talk about liberté when you take heart, because that, or when you take black bile, because that's really important, actually. So this is the loner. So the loner, when the loner takes black bile when they're in pain, alone, scared, etc., which I think is everyone's, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Has this changed? Oh no, cool. So the loner gets black bile when they're in pain, scared, alone, etc. But they also have these individual triggers, which are like when I spend too much time alone, when my lair and my routine are in danger, or I'm in an oppressive social situation. And these tell you when that character is going to feel stressed. And so I want to replicate that using this heart thing, which is players will take heart when one thing happens, which is going to be like, I'm emotionally impacted, or for the agenda, I hope for the best in the face of the worst, or I find my edges, or something like that. It's going to be a little bit harder to get heart in this one. It's going to require you being in a more emotionally engaging situation. And then I have a stack of other ones that you can't see there because the text is too small. But if we come over here, it's a little bit easier. So it's all these ones here about I feel in over my head. I get more than my fair share. I'm humiliated. I misread someone's intentions. I feel like a victim. Like these really specific things. And so one way you're going to define your character is after you've done these 4 adjectives, and after you're like, okay, I'm curious, I'm personable, I'm unlucky, and I'm stubborn. So maybe, maybe like, I take on someone else's burdens. That's an interesting one to me. I'm gonna use that as my heart thing. And Blake, you're absolutely not wrong that heart is not the right name. I don't have a name for it yet. Calling it intimacy is probably the closest to what I want. I'm thinking of the word care. The problem with care is that it has this stupid fucking synonym where it makes people think of careful. So when you roll with more care, it's that you're being more careful, and that's not what it's about. So like comfort maybe, but like comfort is a very specific part of it. And like, why would you take comfort when you take on when you feel in over your head? Like comfort implies comfortable. And that's why there's all this like shitty baggage stuff in evocative work that is what I'm working on. So that's gonna be fun. Now let's talk about how that interacts with our rules over here, which is that the biggest changes we've made is that now, so your higher result, which I'm now calling a click because Sync had the thing, and I still don't like click, but hey, this is apparently the game of names not being right. So your highest result when you both roll really high together, when you both invest the same amount of intimacy into a role. No, that's not true because you can both spend 3 and someone can roll low. When you both result in the same amount of intimacy, I'll say, in a role, in a similar high amount is really, really good. You find comfort in small, quiet in places. You all increase your hope. You may also ask someone involved from the fill them out lower list. You gain hope. You work together. It's effective. You forget the war for a moment. It's comfortable. You learn something about each other in doing it. If you both invest or if you both result in very little intimacy, if you both roll very low, that's a miss, and that's when bad shit happens because neither of you are paying attention. You're both you're not investing in the activity. Now the big change is that in the middle, the higher result used to be the good result, and the lower result used to be the bad result. But now that we're talking about investing intimacy with each other, that's not how human relationships work, or that's not what I want to say about human relationships. When you're doing something together, if someone is investing really highly in the role and someone is really putting their heart into it and someone is holding back, the person who's putting their heart into it is the one who's going to get the complications. The person who's putting their heart into it is the one who's going to be hurt. The person who's holding back is going to get the success. And that's a cool mechanic because now you've got this resource that in order to develop it, you've got to put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable in order to build heart, which again, Blade, not a great name. I'm totally with you. In order to build heart, you need to take on someone else's burdens. In order to build heart, you need to find your edges. You need to do shit that's going to push the game forward in these really interesting ways. But when you roll with someone, when someone's like, hey, I'd really like you to roll with me because we do things better if we're together. We have a better chance of succeeding really highly. And you say, yeah, but dog, if I roll with you, I've got to go out there and I've got to get myself hurt to generate more heart because my heart trigger is I take heart when I'm hurt. And it's going to create this playoff between, I'm hoping it creates this playoff between engaging with each other. So in Liberté, black bile is an expression of anxiety and frustration. And to take it is almost a negative thing sometimes. In my game, intimacy is this really important thing and a very valuable resource. And as I said, like if you want to roll with someone and they're like, no, I know that you don't have any heart. I know you're on 0 heart at the moment, but just roll with me anyway. You're going to want to do that, but they're not going to want that because it's going to give them the consequences and it's going to give them the zeros, which is just a thing, right? Like just a thing. Now we need to talk about hope because hope is the next mechanic that comes in that is important. Hope is what's replacing ablative wounds, basically. Hope is replacing weariness and damage. And the reason that hope's important is this feedback. So at the moment, I've been picking on you too much, V. At the moment, we're going to go over here. We're going to pick on Tib because they're in the middle. So Haley's character Tib at the moment has a maximum heart of 4. That means that they can roll once or twice without having to get themselves in, without having to realize how little they can really do. So it's productive, right? You want that much heart, and they're hopeful. But let's say what's one where you lose hope? I mean, this one down here, brave the active war zone, bottom left here. You draw attention to yourself, give your friends an opening, you get stuck for a while alone, and you lose hope. So let's say that Haley loses hope. So she goes down to confident. And we noticed that on going down one level in her hope track, her maximum heart is gone as well. And as she loses hope further and further, she loses the ability to be intimate with people. She loses the ability to connect and have that empathy, that connection with people. Connection, maybe. I want bonds, but everyone's like, no, bonds has too much baggage, and they're not wrong. Maybe I should call it bondage. So this character, it doesn't matter how much she realizes how little she can do. It doesn't matter how much they realize how little they can do. The maximum heart they will ever get up to is one. Which makes them incredibly less effective in the group, which means that the group is going to want to do stuff like share what little you have, where you all involved raise your hope, where if you agree that this means something, you raise your hope. And when that happens, when Haley's character, when Tib gets out there and starts befriending people and sharing with people and having successful roles, they will be able to go up and they will open up their heart and have more capacity to engage with the game. And it creates this kind of weird death spiral where if everyone is fucking hopeless, like, that's going to be really hard for your game. You're going to struggle to roll together, and that's fine. That's the point. So I think this is going to work more. I think the way that this interacts with a player's desire to roll all the time, especially when you've lost a bit of hope or two, and that heart starts becoming a very, very scarce resource, because boy, will it cost a lot to be like, okay, I'll spend my 2 heart on this roll, and that's it. I'm back to 0 because I can only have a maximum of 2 because I'm sinking. Shit, now I've got to go out and I've got to feel the loss of war again. Like, now I've got to go out and I've got to take on someone's burdens, because if I don't, next time I roll, I'm going to be at +0. So we're going to be more likely to fail. And that makes me really happy. That makes me very happy. And so hope replaces this idea in Liberté called exploding. The point of exploding is if you carry 5 black bile, what I'm calling heart, if you carry 5 black bile, the GM can turn to you and say, when, like, you're going to do something that damages the situation, you're going to break some shit, you're going to take something that belongs to someone else, roll, and you spend 3, so you get yourself off that 5, you make the roll, and on a real low result, if you roll like Snake Eyes, you don't let it influence you, and on a real high result, you do it and you have consequences. And on the middle result, you either do it or you get those consequences. It's super cool. I'm super a fan of it. I think Vivian is a fucking genius. I think it's a really great mechanic. Yeah, like Blake, you're not wrong about it interacting with, like, tonally, this game is not comfortable, but it's beautiful. And that's the thing is that it says something about, and my experience with my depression is that when you are losing that hope, when you are sinking, when you feel like you can't connect with people, if someone comes to you and says, I'm going to spend a lot, you don't have to spend any. I'm going to spend 3 of my heart for you, and I'm going to get the high result, and I'm going to take the consequences, but you're going to get the good stuff. This is going to work for you. Like, it demands that players rescue each other, which is an expression of my experience. and why I'm so wrapped with it at the moment. And that's the big change. Changing out stats for heart and moving it to hope. Moving hope as the weariness. Like, yes, I need a better name for heart. I'm aware of it. I'm working on it. I love your suggestions about comfort, empathy, humanity. They're ideas. I'm not happy at the moment to spend the time I'd need thinking on those to make sure they work, but they're there. We're going to talk about the other feedback that came back for home front. This is the Google Docs that the Google Docs sheet that I kept as we were debriefing. DB is for debrief. Starting with the start of session move. This is a really interesting idea. So at the moment, I have them move rest, which is a resource move. Where is it? I must have moved it up to... I did. When everyone rests, the story jumps forward and read a montage of how you spend your time. Then when you enjoy little luxuries, live on 2 scrap, raise your hope. When you scrape by, live on 1 scrap. Go without, the absence takes its toll, lose hope. This could function as a start of session move. There's no reason for it not to. I don't know if it specifically needs to be in there as one. I kind of like starting in the middle of a problem. So being like, oh, you've got no scrap, and we've already decided that this hospital has lots of stuff in it. So you're in the hospital, and tell me what you're doing now, rather than starting in the safe house, spend the resource, find out that you've got a scarcity, then act on that. I think I prefer, you got all this stuff, go back to your safe house. What do you do now? Oh, people are hurt, rest and recover. And all that stuff you just collected, wipe it out, which I like. I like. So I'm not sure if a starter session move is super useful, but it was certainly something that was mentioned. I think what I need to do instead is to get a bit better with what I want for a start of session, what I want the start of a session to look like. It's really worth noting, if you watch that game, I should bring up the time codes. And I'm going to bring up the time codes now because I want to talk to a very specific nature of that. So my time codes, we started the game at 139.02. Let's call it 140. We hit our first really good intimacy move at 152. 12 minutes into the game, we hit Forget the War, which was beautiful. 20, 30, 35 minutes into the game, we hit Share What Little You Have, which maybe is too long. Oh, certainly an idea. What else are we going to talk about? So I want to talk about formalism of those, of these character introduction moves. So this, I think, was a term that Haley used: usable, useful, as well as character defining. And this was referring to those character introduction questions that we had before, which are, oh god, why? Which are these? And one of the things that came up is that they're either usable or useful, but they're very rarely both. And that's a really good point. And that's a really interesting formalistic way to approach it. So I think what I need those questions to be is I need them to be useful for setting generation. I need them to be character defining. I think that's it. I really want defining. I really want obligation, but I don't think it needs to be in there. So I'm going to give obligation this. Obligation is I'm porting over as part of what other PBTA games have had and used. Obligation is a very big part of how they create characters. The Gunlugger's history question is, one of you found me bleeding and did nothing. Like, who was it? And that is a question that generates an emotional obligation between two characters. I don't know if I want that or if I need that. I want it, but I'm not sure if it's useful, because this isn't a game where I need to force characters to work together. That's what the mechanic does. If someone says my character gives you all the bird and leaves, they can do that, but they're now rolling on their own for fucking everything. So, mm, mm, it's a thing. It's a thing. Yeah. Blake, I did have a move originally for what if you let's go to move ideas. It'll be in here somewhere. I did have a thing in here for return. Yeah, come on, you were just there. Return to the safe house after time away, and it was like it was the thing for like when your character isn't there. I'm not sure it's useful as a. It's certainly not useful in the way that I'm playtesting the game at the moment. Is the important bit. Oh, this was a really, really good response. Go toe to toe. So I originally had a move, which we're going to bring up in second, I think. I originally had this move called Go Toe to Toe. And Go Toe to Toe is a move for when you want to assert your will onto someone. You tell them how it's going to be. And the response was that it was a heroic move, that it didn't fit. And that's a really, really interesting question, because the intent behind Go Toe to Toe is that it leads into Become the War, which is very tonally different, which is meant to be tonally different because it's about becoming violent. It's about ruining everything to get what you want. So that was really interesting. In the debrief, the comment was, "This is weird. It's weird to have a move where cough mute. It's weird to have a move where you have characters who are defining what happens." And so the original stakes for Go Toe to Toe was that whoever had the higher result set the reward, and whoever had the lower result set the cost. So in traditional PBTA, or in Apocalypse World, and I guess traditional PBTA, your version of the reward is they take +1 forward or they mark XP. Your version of the cost is you erase one of their highlights, they take -1 forward, they're acting under pressure, that sort of stuff. So that was what this was. The problem is, as was pointed out, stepping up to someone and telling them that it's going to go this way, not even in the mechanics of the move, but certainly in the way it was presented and in the framing, is way too heroic. And so what we moved to is this move called Plead Your Case. When you plead your case, roll plus a heart spent. On a hit, you're opening yourself up, and they'll take notice. They may ask everyone involved a question from the Feel Them Out high list. So it doesn't matter. Like, if you're going to plead your case to people, they're gonna figure you out. And then on a low result, they'll show you some kindness. On a higher result, you can only choose one if you give them something, if you purchase that from them. So either they do it when you want them to, otherwise they'll do it when it works for them. They do exactly what you want, otherwise they'll cut corners. They consider you square, otherwise they'll assume you owe them one. That is really cool for me. Oh yeah. So V, you were there for the playtest, and you saw that Go Toe to Toe doesn't work tonally. Do you think this meets that need more? And I'm going to talk while I wait for your response because of YouTube lag. But I think the intent behind Plead Your Case here is much more that it's a really, really similar result, but it's so much more about, because you're still deciding what the cost is, but it's so much more focused on um, asking for something rather than telling people how it's going to be. And I think that fits the tone of the game a lot better. I also got to do some cool stuff with Become the War, which I'm real happy with. That we should talk about next. Become the War, uh, on a 4 minus, like, so you roll plus Heartspan as usual. On a 7 plus, really high, you're an avatar of violence. You put yourself in this too much. Everyone present, including you, discards their heart to 0 and reduces their hope, and then you take what you wanted. On a 5 to 6, you get to choose control, and on a 4 minus, you trade violence, and then everyone around you loses hope, and the war fucks you up, which I really like, because it's like, it's punishing everyone else. That was a really core part of what I wanted from the violence move. Uh, yeah, let's test it out. V, you are my favorite because you're so right. Like, yeah, let's test it out is the right response. Um, whether it works functionally, we can only find out at the table, right? And that was a big part of what this taught me, and what I want to give other designers watching this, is that, like, you can only find this stuff out. So let's talk about Feel Them Out. I really want to talk about Feel Them Out as well. So this is the original one? Yeah. So what does, where is it? Oh my goodness. Feel Them Out. So Feel Them Out originally was meant to be this thing about generating momentum. Okay. Feel Them Out was totally about generating momentum. And that was where I made my mistake. This is a good learning point for everyone out there. I viewed Feel Them Out only as a way for people to resolve conflicts by asking questions. And that's not what read a person moves are about. V, I think it was you that made the comment, and you're entirely right. Read a person moves are about learning more about people. And they are just as good as, if you haven't played Good Society, first off, go fuck yourself. Play Good Society now. But if you haven't played Good Society, there's a mechanic in it called monologue tokens. And monologue tokens work like this. Your character experiences a scene, and I say, at a moment of great drama, because I'm nothing if not dramatic, I hand you my monologue token, and I say, Jeremy, I want to hear what your character thinks in their head about this. What's the scene inside your character's head? And it's so good. And it's character revealing, right? It's this whole moment about engaging who our characters are and what they believe in ways they can't express outward. And I was being a fucking idiot. I was like, no, this game's all about, like, mechanics and getting scrap and shit. So that's what Feel Them Out's going to be all about. And so if we look at Feel Them Out, you will see it's a functional move. Ask them one of the list below, their player will last one back. Ask them of the list below, but you won't like the answer, their player will last one back. How much scrap will it cost me for this? What can I get them to give me this? What's their most immediate need? What do they intend to do? What do they want from me? It's stupid, functional shit. And what happened was Tib and Phil wanted to have this emotional scene where they were talking about something, and the players wanted to express things that their characters couldn't express out loud without violating the conceit of the game, without violating the idea that they're these teenagers that don't really express themselves well. And so they rolled the move, and they asked a question each, and we kind of got to what the moment wanted to be. But the move said, you ask more now and ask another one each, and it was just too much. And I actually kind of breezed over it. I was like, nah, let's fucking move on. Let's skip that bit. And it especially didn't work because they were two characters working together, and the answer, and it has on there, you won't like the answer, which is fucking stupid. So what we needed to Feel Them Out to do was to function in those quiet character moments, as well as in the functional moments when you're trying to figure out what the baddie is talking about or whatever, right? So let's come over the new one. So uh Feel Them Out now has two lists. It has a lower result and a higher result list. The lower result is about understanding people. They're open and honest. You can read into them. Ask one of the list below. These are still kind of functional moves. What's your most immediate want? What's your most immediate need? What do you intend to do? How can I get you to do something? No bullshit. What are you really trying to tell me? Um, which I really like that last one from a tonal perspective. I also like it from a character perspective. So if you have two characters and they're having this quiet moment, you're like, it sounds like you guys are trying to get a touch on each other. Roll Feel Them Out, and the lower result person can just be like, just fucking cut it away. Just tell me, what are you trying to tell me? And the cool thing about it being a move, this is Monster Hearts 101. The cool thing about it being a move means you can't do it unless you incite the move, which means if you want to ask someone, no bullshit, what are you really trying to tell me? It's a flag to the MC. Guys, if you want to answer that question, let's put some dice on it. It's like, oh well, all right, all right, and it's super more effective for what I want. Now let's talk about the high result ones. So this is something feels off about them. All of a sudden, these questions are less functional. What lie have you told me recently? What have I done that most bothers you? What are you afraid I'll do? What is troubling you the most right now? What are you trying not to tell me? The cool thing about these is that they are not all by design bad. Rolling the higher result doesn't mean you are going to generate a problem with the person that you're talking to. It doesn't mean that you are going to fight with them, and it doesn't mean that you're going to ask them bad questions. Like imagine a list that was like, the share what little you have list is this, which is like, what regrets do you have about me? How do you show me like about a time that someone hurt you? Who would you rather I was? They're fucking dark questions. These ones are not dark. They're just about less comfortable topics, I guess. So you don't get to ask, what do you want me to do? Instead, you have to ask, what are you afraid I'll do? You don't get to ask, what are you really trying to tell me? You get to ask, what are you trying not to tell me? And I think that does what I want it to do, but we're not going to know until this gets to the table. So that's really exciting. Really, very exciting. And so that was really interesting. Like that was such a cool moment to see, to look at it and be like, holy shit, I've been looking at this game wrong. I have missed an opportunity that my game is presenting to me. I need to take a look at it. That's really cool. Really cool. This is why I recommend you playtest like as soon as possible, because oops, that's wrong. That's fine. Wait. Yeah. Okay. Oh no. Cool. I just thought I saw something that was really bad, but it's not. It's just my reading of it was bad. I was reading the old version. So let's talk about things that I've been doing and things that. So we've already talked about things that I've done. Let's talk about things that I need to do. So these were my priorities for the second playtest. Changing the stats to heart. Yeah, so care, guts, blood, heartbeats. Based on Vivian's use of black bile, I could use sanguine. A lot of ideas. I don't really know what I want to use, but it's there. I need to fix up my global feeling point generator. So at the moment, my global heart generator is kind of 4 different things. I am emotionally impacted by the war. I feel the loss of war. I hope for the best in the face of the worst, or I will find my edges. And I don't know which one I want, and I don't know which one's going to be effective, and that's going to require a playtest as well. But I have ideas, so that's a good thing. What else we got here? Pitch and introduction is an important bit. So I went into this game thinking, as I was talking about before with Rubber Duck Code, I went into this game thinking, I know this, I can express it to them, and I couldn't. So that's something we're going to work on for the future. Then we've got, we fixed toe to toe, we fixed feel them out. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I can't tell unless I put it in front of emotive players to find out. And then our introduction questions, more specific character introductions. So this is, oh, goodness me, does not like. This is kind of what I'm doing in this D column here about like, we were the first to find the safe house. What was the building? Where did you find it? How did you help me feel at home? Where it's kind of 3 questions. The first 2 are functional, and the third one is more obligation. So the map will be drawn while these questions are being discussed. So one person will be asking the question, one person will be answering it, and someone else will be drawing it. And then there's kind of all these other questions, where did you find it? Who did you give the share to, and why? That creates a location. Yeah, this is kind of location generation stuff. So as you talk about, I found this scrap in an old supermarket. Someone's drawing old supermarket on the map and stuff like that. I'm really hoping that condenses the two and is a little bit more usable and useful as that was directed to. But I feel so deflated about this part, about the setting questions part, because in my head, it was so good, and when it was played out, it had really effective moments, but it was never enough. It didn't feel right. Something about it was wrong, and I don't know what it was yet. And I think that's why I'm struggling with it. Why I'm so like down on it. You've seen that whole list is bold, except for that thing about intro questions, because like I don't know what it should look like. I'm not copying this from another game, like everything else. This needs to be more than history. Otherwise, I would just put 2 bonds at the bottom or 2 hex questions at the bottom. But I want it to be more than that. I want it to build the world as much as it builds people. So yeah, that's gonna be my next thing, and then I gotta play test it, and then I gotta smash into it again. And it's just gonna be an event, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with an event. But I will say, and I want to say to everyone, and it's something that I've said a lot out loud, as and for designers, but for people who are making anything, I recommend you playtest it just because it gave me authority to continue. Playtesting it and seeing the core of it work, and seeing the story that we told that I'm still thinking about and I'm still interested in, and I'd still like to see where it goes, made me think that this is worth my time. And I wouldn't be having this conversation with you now if I hadn't playtested the game. I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't have the bravery to do a stat method like this, or to do hope like this, because I don't know. I just wouldn't. I'd feel like it's too much too soon. I'd be ashamed of the work that I did. So I recommend you playtest. I recommend you get people that are wonderful and that you trust, and just smash your head against it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about me smashing my head against it for the next time. It is currently the 30th of June. 6, 7, 8, 9 July, I'm out of town. Wednesdays, I'm doing Monster of the Week, I think, which, by the way, will be up on this channel. Monster of Week, Hexco. office workers chasing monsters. It's going to be fucking dope. Yeah, I think we're going to look at I think we're probably going to look at second week in July, unless I'm free tomorrow. I might just try. I might just try and get something off the ground. I need 4 players. I can probably get away with 3, so I might just do it. We'll see what happens, hey? Regardless, the feedback document is in the description. The work in progress document is in the description. Maybe I put no, that was all I put in there. And I don't think I'm going to put anything else in there at the moment. The next thing to do for me is to finish those introduction questions tonight so that I can maybe get a playtest running tomorrow. They don't need to be good. They just need to be functional because I'm testing the stat method, I'm not testing the introduction questions. I'm going to we should talk about that. We should talk about that because it's really important to me. So the first thing I did was I set playtest goals, because if you go into this as a young designer, as a new designer, and you say, I'm super excited about this whole thing working, you're going to fucking hate yourself when something doesn't work, when one thing doesn't work. So I went in with these playtest goals. This is something I learned in the Air Force that I really, really love. 3 goals, 3 very clear, specific goals. I want my move resolution structure to work and to be grokkable at the table. I want my players to know what to do, like know how to interact with the world. And I want no more than 1 role where at the end of it, everyone looks at each other and goes, well, what do we do now? And you know what? I hit those 3. And that is the coolest thing. My first playtest was a success, not because that game is now finished, not because it's ready for publication, but because I wrote down 3 goals I wanted and I fucking hit them. And I'm going to write down 3 goals for my next playtest, and I'm going to hit them. And I tell you right now, those introduction questions are not going to be a part of it. So they don't need to be good. They just need to be functional. And that is a freedom that I hope that you can take away from this, because it is empowering to me to be able to look at my game and say, it's not ready yet, like it's not perfect yet, but we can try it. That means so much to me. Yeah, I'm super on board with that idea. I'm super on board with core immediate goals for playtest, as opposed to being like, shrug, is the game good? It also helps to direct your questioning a lot at the end when you say to your players, like, so did you guys have fun? Because that doesn't really mean anything. Instead, you get to say, did you know what to do? When did you know what your character wanted to achieve? And that's super functional, super useful. So tonight, it's 9:13 p.m. I'm going to work for the next hour and a half, and I'm going to have those setting questions done. I'm going to have about 8 of them. They're going to be functional, and that's all that matters. Then, hopefully tomorrow, if I can get it off the ground, I will play a version of this. We will see what happens. It's going to be so good. I'm super excited about it. And it'll be up on this channel, and then y'all will hear another discussion about that playtest and what we do after that. But iterative development is really the key to this for me, and that's always what Drawing the Owl has been about. Iterations, failures, and moving forward. On top of those, I certainly had my share of failures. Toe-to-toe was a failure. My setting generation was a failure. Like lots of things. But that's why I'm iterating. That's why I'm scrubbing things out. I'm drawing 3 circles, and then I'm going to draw the rest of a fucking owl. As always, any questions can go to me at Twitter, at Action Economy, or Gauntlet Slacks if you're there. Oh, if you are interested in playing cool games with me, if you are interested in playtesting this game, I recommend you jump on the Gauntlet $7 Patreon slots that are opening soon, because I think they're opening now. Uh, Once they're gone, and they are so cool. And then you get to play awesome games with me and V and everything. And yeah, actually, so V's put something in the chat about not failures learnings, and I don't know if she gets it or if she taught it to Haley or what. But man, like these these two have this awesome euphemistic way of telling you that you're fucking it away. Like Haley's like, no, it's interesting. You have to make a design choice. And it's like, you have to make a design choice. Do you want your game to be good or not? And V is the best. Like stuff like that. No, you're not failing. You're learning. You're iterating. And they're just being so wonderful to me. And on Twitter a long time ago, someone posted a thing about um, like stop trying to get your games seen by the people who are successful now, like the John Harpers and the Vincent Bakers and stuff. Instead, work on your own community. Work with the people that are with you now. I recommend that because the people who fuck with you when you ain't nothing, the people who rock up to your first playtest with a giant smile on their face and say, I'm really interested in what you're doing, are your community. And the people that do that who have a good work ethic and who are insane design geniuses. I'll never understand those story brewers on my own, to be honest. But the people who are like them, who slum it with you and work with you on your projects, they are more important and more valuable than John Harper patting you on the head and calling you a good boy will ever be. I'm a huge fan of John Harper and his work and his designs, and he called me cool and clever once, and that was very special. Um, but as much as I respect him and as much as I love his designs, um, V, Haley, Ryan, Ari, Jesse Ross, Tyler, Lauren, Kyle, Christo Mead, Vivian Faison, like these people who are my peers, if I can be so bold, have done so much more for me than the the greats ever will. And so I tell you, when you're making your games, design first and foremost for yourself and integrate with your community and work with others, because as that Twitter thread said, the people who fuck with you when you ain't shit, they are your real homies. Like they are your real OG mates, and they're the people that make your designs better. I promise you that. Now you've been listening to me for an hour plus, and I have a lot of writing to do to get this ready for tomorrow. So please, ladies and gentlemen, continue to love yourselves, love each other, and I just want to point out as well. There is a book called Letters to a Young Poet, which I'm reading at the moment, that I will bring some stuff to you from, which from which I will bring stuff to you next time we talk. And I recommend that you give it a Google if you get a chance. It's a wonderful treatise on designing and writing. But until then, the only thing that you can do is to just keep giving a hoot.